Google's literally referencing and disputing what some people think is the best practice. Hello everyone, Alex at OpenMoves here, and for today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about the future of Google Ads and some somewhat surprising and interesting guidance that Google is giving to advertisers today about what it considers to be modern best practices. In this document, it's one of the first times that I've seen on paper in a Google branded PowerPoint that there's a direct reference to and repudiation of basically what a lot of people think is the right way to do Google Ads. And it's interesting to see Google call this out in basically plain language, right? So not beating around the bush and saying, consider XYZ or sort of general language about how Google Ads works or is meant to work, but Google's literally referencing and disputing what some people think is the best practice. I'm just going to look at page 7 here. So I'm not going to read every word, but match type specific ad groups and campaigns. So it's important to note, this is not what Google is telling you to do. This is what Google is telling you not to do. Google is telling you to not have these so-called artificial constraints because Google feels this is a limitation on machine learning. And this whole document and the whole thrust of this modern methodology is about machine learning and automation and how to buy media in this sort of world of automation. So this is very interesting. Google is specifically saying, do not do match type specific campaigns. Well, I mean, that's interesting because there are many agencies and many media buyers and lots of brands who would say the best practice in Google Ads is we have a phrase match campaign and we have an exact match campaign, and over time we drive traffic to phrase, and then we see the performance of phrases, and we look at the queries, and then we move those queries into exact. And it's our goal to have X% of traffic running through exact match, yada yada. Google is specifically saying do not do this. The second bullet point is pretty much the same thing, right? So Google is saying, don't have this idea. People call this in the industry like alpha beta campaigns, or there's other ways to describe it. But Google is saying, no, don't have one campaign with all your keywords as exact and another campaign with all your keywords as phrase and try to shape the traffic between them and manage the queries with negative keywords and so on. Again, that's like a ton of people are doing that as their best practice. Google is saying, stop doing this, right? And then this bullet here, the fourth bullet, equally fascinating. So monitoring the search terms report and adding a low volume search term as exact match keywords. Google is saying don't do that, which is, again, for a lot of media buyers, it's sort of like going to your dentist and the dentist says, actually, don't brush your teeth. It's like a counter indication to what some people think is actually what you're supposed to be doing, right? Some people would say, look, my job as a media buyer is to monitor the search query report and find good queries and move those into exact match keywords. Like that's literally what I'm paid to do by my firm or my clients. That's what people expect from a media buyer. And Google is saying, well, actually don't do that. That's wrong. That's not what you should be doing. So that's really interesting, and it's really sort of interesting guidance for what the future of Google Ads is and how Google is driving the best practices and driving the platform. Obviously, I'm not expecting that everyone in the industry today is going to give up their alpha beta single keyword ad group campaigns. What Google is saying not to do here is basically the way that many professional accounts are managed and probably will continue to be managed. But I think that realistically, if you're looking at your Google Ads account today and it's like you have 40 different campaigns and 500 single keyword ad groups, and you've got a smart, highly paid analyst spending all day sort of manipulating phrases and trying to drive traffic here and there, I mean, that might still be the best thing for performance today. It might be especially good for performance if you're in a somewhat obtuse or obscure or complicated B2B industry or something to that effect, where machine learning is hard to make work really well for whatever reason. But I'm not sure that this is going to be durable or persistent beyond another few months or a couple of years. I mean, I can't imagine 3 years from now that the best practice of the industry is still going to be, well, we have our media buying team maneuvering traffic between match types and campaigns. So this is sort of a look into Google's perspective on the future of Google Ads and what media buyers will be doing in a few years, I think that even though this slide will probably be dismissed by lots of people who will say, well, Google doesn't know what the right thing to do is, or Google only cares about automation, Google only cares about their bottom line, Google wants us to waste money on bad keywords. There's a way to be cynical about this, and that may be partially true. But I do think that this is a sort of prescient view into the future eventually. So I don't expect people are going to drop these best practices, so-called best practices today, but I do think that they are going to be dropped within 24 to 36 months at the most. So just my opinion, but I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in this document. Again, openmoves.com/blog. We did a slightly longer review of some of these points, and yeah, go check it out. Bye.